All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving long weekend. Got some shopping in. For those of you that don't know, this is DFS Army's tournament strategy show where we, during the usual week, will look at the previous night's slate. Then we'll also look at each game, guys we want to go over on, guys we're looking at being under on. And then, of course, 5:30 p.m. pre-lock show, me and B-Dubs, Brandon, we'll talk through what we're actually doing on the slate, how we'll use the domination station. And of course, for that, click the link in the description. Feel free to use promo code BOB for a 10% discount there. But y'all, I like this slate. That might be weird to say. It's a 5-gamer. Again, I like these 5-gamers usually. I think each game has an interesting spot where we can look to get a little bit different. But let's go ahead and jump into it. And I think, too, there's not just one fantastic game that everyone's going to be looking to target for once, too. It's been a while since we've had a pretty balanced slate across the board. So first things first, we'll look at this Portland Trailblazers game against the Pacers. You guys know we like picking on the Pacers. We like playing these guys. We like seeing them on the slate. And the Trailblazers, too. I think the biggest concern here is, of course, this gigantic spread. That is giving me a little bit of pause. It is making me a little nervous, but I still like this game. First things first, on the Trailblazers side, when it comes to injury news, there's not a lot here. The Trailblazers are looking pretty healthy for the first time in a while. Of course, Simons is still out, which matters a little bit, but nothing crazy here. Malcolm Brogdon is looking enticing here. I feel like it could just be a me thing, but I feel like I am usually on the wrong side of Brogdon. But let me look a little bit closer at it. He's been in decent form. Of course, he had a good game against the Bucks. That makes a lot of sense. Most guards do. Had a good little break there where he was out dealing with the injury. This is a good spot for Brogdon. It's hard to find a reason not to play him. He's only 7,900 facing this not great Pacers defense. Yeah, I like Brogdon here, especially just because we don't have a ton of value quite yet on this slate. I like trying to make sure Brogdon's a priority for me, especially at this price tag. Outside of that, Grant and Sharp are fine. Again, they're facing this really bad Pacers defense, so we can look to pick on them a little bit here. But I think the guy that I'm probably the most excited to play is DeAndre Ayton. You all know I've been on the Ayton train for a while now, and it's been treating us pretty well outside of that game he didn't play against Utah. But again, he's been in decent form. He had a strong game against Phoenix for his price tag, and he had another strong game against Milwaukee. So I'm expecting him to do well in a nice matchup, good, fast-paced environment. And yeah, I love Ayton and Brogdon tonight. And so we'll wait and see where ownership falls. We should have that in like the next hour or so if we don't get it while we're still live. But as long as they're not too chalky, they're both on my radar as potential leverage plays and potential core plays. Probably Brogdon more than Ayton, but I do have some interest in both sides there. Next up, we have the Pacers. This is where I personally get a little bit less excited about this game. Halliburton at 11K now from a salary standpoint. Obviously, he's worth that price tag. He has that 70-point upside, which you want from a guy with that kind of price tag. But what worries me is the spread. I don't foresee this game staying close enough for him to exceed the price tag. I like paying up with some guys tonight, but we always talk about it. We can't play everybody, and just looking at who I want to prioritize, Halliburton is unfortunately going to be on the lower end of pay up guys for me on this slate. Outside of that, other Pacers that makes sense. But with that being said, if Halliburton shows up in my lineups naturally, I am not going to X him out or try to lower it. I just don't foresee that happening for myself on this slate. Yeah, for the Pacers, again, not too many of these guys are standing out for me. Of course, we could see Hield start. Nesmith is currently questionable. If he moves into the starting lineup, it could be a bit of an interesting spot for him at 4,400. So Aaron and Hield, like they're on my radar, but they're not guys that I'm overly excited about playing. I think they're priced pretty appropriately. So I'll let the domination station do its thing here, but I don't foresee myself really trying to force exposure to any of these guys. And it's really just the spread that's scaring me off of it more than anything. The Trailblazers guys are cheaper in a nice matchup, whereas the Pacers are priced for a full game, and that's a full game I don't think we're going to see tonight. Next up, we have another interesting game on the slate. Nice total, 231, 6-point spread, so at least it's a little bit closer. We have the Lakers against the Sixers. The Sixers haven't been the super tough defense we try to avoid like they have been historically. This season, they've been an average defense, decent, but they haven't been a shutdown defense by any means. So they're not a team I'm trying to actively avoid tonight. I like Anthony Davis. I am hoping and praying he stays low owned. There's a lot of bigs on this slate, so I think it should help balance things out there. But AD is someone that I would prefer to be over the field on. LeBron James, we make the joke, we're like, play LeBron James in a national televised game. This game is on NBA TV. LBJ has honestly just been good this season, though. So, and at 9,700, he's definitely viable in this matchup. Assuming this game stays close, he should be involved. He is questionable, so that's always something you don't love to see, but he's been playing in these situations more often than he hasn't, so I would expect him to play here again. I'm fine playing LBJ, but I'm prioritizing Anthony Davis. So if I don't get LeBron, that's just the way it is. D'Angelo Russell is another fine fill-in. He's not moving the needle for me one way or the other, where I'm trying to force him in the lineups tonight. Austin Reeves is someone that I would expect to see show up in my lines to some extent, but again, not someone that I'm trying to force. My top priority here is Anthony Davis, and then I'm going to let the Dom Station do the rest of filling in the pieces from there. Sixers side of things is interesting as well. Unfortunately, is not with solid, cheap guys. Again, we're kind of lacking some of that value at this point. Joel Embiid, we have seen at this point, we can play bigs against the Lakers. He's someone I don't want to forget about on this slate. I'm even okay having some AD and Joel Embiid lineups. I'm not trying to avoid that. Tyrese Maxey, decent again, 9,200. Not the value he was earlier this season, but still a viable price tag for him in a game environment I like more than I think most people will. And then outside of that, Harris is fine. Doesn't move the needle for me too much. Melton is a bit more interesting. I want to see where ownership falls for him. And then outside of that, I'm telling you guys, we're desperate for value. I'm getting to some guys like Nicholas Batum and Robert Covington. Again, you don't feel good about them, but they see decent minutes, and they have, if things start falling for them, they can make some of these lineups work. So fingers crossed we get more value or any value that will make us not have to do this. But the way things stand right now, I might have to have some Batum/Covington exposure on this slate. Next up, again, we have another nice high total game and close spread. If I had to guess, this will probably be the game that people force exposure to the most. And if they don't, they should. And if everyone's super low owned in this game, then I'll try to be higher on it than I probably already am. The biggest piece of news for this Wizards team is really just Jordan Poole. He's currently listed as questionable, which is a pretty big deal just because he is around 28-30% usage rate. So it's good for us to, have some of that exposure, or it's just good to know that when he's out, that is a pretty drastic and dramatic change for how the Wizards operate. Let's see. For instance, guys who see an increasing usage with Jordan Poole off the court are Denny Avdia. He sees a 5.4% increase in usage. Kyle Kuzma sees a 2.9% increase, and Tyus Jones and Daniel Gafford also see a nice increase in usage as well. Those are guys like Tyus Jones, Gafford. I already like a decent bit on this slate, but if Jordan Poole ends up being out, they'll change from, hey, I like you, to being priorities for me on this slate. So keep a close eye on that news. It matters a good bit here. If Jordan Poole plays, I'm playing him, and I want to be over the field to him because this is, again, highest total game on the slate, closest spread, best game environment of the night. So Poole plays, I'm playing him. Tyus Jones, I'm going to keep a close eye on his ownership. If Tyus is chalky, which on a 5-gamer I would say is probably anywhere from 20% or more, I'm comfortable not forcing exposure to Tyus. But if he's super low owned, around like 5 to 8%, I would be willing to take a shot here, but got to keep a close eye on that. And then Gafford has just been surprisingly good here lately. Let me double check, make sure I'm not lying here about that. But okay, so he only had a 21-point game against Atlanta in their last game, which isn't great by any means. But then he had 30 points against Milwaukee, 39 against Charlotte, which is a matchup we would expect him to do well in. And okay, he's been decent. But I still think he's very viable here against the Pistons tonight, and just someone I want to keep a close eye on. I would like to see him show up a little bit, but I do want to prioritize paying up at center today instead of taking too many shots on some of these mid-range center plays. Octavius, what's up, man? Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good weekend. Let's see. Pistons are the ones who have the ideal matchup here. This Wizards team, they play at a fast pace. They're one of the worst defenses in the league. These are teams we pick on a daily basis. And I feel like I say it all the time. But Cade Cunningham, a little bit more expensive than he was over the weekend, $8,300. But I still love this spot for him. I am still going to have a crap ton of Cade Cunningham. Probably going to be a core play for me, especially I'm assuming he will be relatively chalky on this slate. Jalen Duren, we love playing bigs against Washington. Jalen Duren's in a fantastic spot. I plan on having plenty of exposure to him. Jaden Ivey, 5,400 guards, staying around 30 minutes a night, going up against one of the worst defenses in the league. You guys see what's happening here. We're playing these guys. When it comes to Thompson, he's viable. He doesn't stand out as much as some of the other guards or starters for this team, but I do want him to stay in my mix. So not going to X him out or anything like that, but I like him, again, just because he's going up against this really bad defense of Washington's. Outside of that, some of the other cheapies don't love, but I really like the Pistons tonight and want to be over the field on pretty much all of their starters. Pelicans are another interesting team. It looks like Zion will be back tonight, so don't have to worry about him not playing. Let's see here. Any other news? Yeah, nothing crazy here. There's a lot of narratives going around about how much better Zion is when he's had more time to rest. And he's had 2 days to rest, so he should be coming in pretty strong here. The Jazz haven't been a great front court defensively this season, and so Zion's looking like one of the better plays on the slate. And so he's one of those guys that I want to prioritize tonight. Brandon Ingram is interesting, but I like the Clippers guys more than Ingram just across the board. So not as excited to take a shot on him as I am on a guy like Zion. Utah, big news here. Markkanen's questionable and Clarkson's questionable. It looks like Clarkson was practicing on Sunday, so it looks like he probably will be playing, whereas Markkanen was not, so it's a bit more likely he'll be out. If Markkanen and Clarkson, if they both end up being out or one or the other misses, it's a pretty dramatic increase to the rest of the team. So it seems like we should get some value with one or both of these guys missing. That's the news that we're waiting on. It's hard to do too much here until we really know which of these two, if not both, end up missing a game. So it's one of those, just like, no, we're playing the Jazz tonight. We're just waiting to see the news to figure out what Jazz guys we're actually playing. But we're going to be there. Bam, what's up? Said, how much over the field would you go over on a player? So for me, a leverage play would be something I'm going to go double the field on. So let's say John Collins is projected to be 15% owned, then I would want to be around 30% if he ends up being a leverage play for me tonight. If I have a core play, I'm usually 60% or more of them is my usual strategy, especially when I'm 20 maxing. So just depends on what someone's ownership is. If I want to go under, I'm usually comfortable going about 10 to 15% below what someone's projected ownership is. Every now and then I like to get a little wild with it and just, X out someone, but that's not usually the best strategy in my opinion. So yeah, I like these Jazz guys a good bit, but we have to wait for the news to see what we're actually doing there. The Nuggets, I mean, I feel like it's pretty easy at this point. We just play Jokic and we go from there. As long as Jamal Murray's out, Jokic, everything has been up for him right now. So I just want to continue to get exposure to him, even when it's hard. And that's tonight's slate. Even if it's only like 10%, he's in 2 lines for me when at 20 max, that's fine. But I want to make sure I have exposure to him. And Aaron Gordon is listed as TBD. So we'll see when that news comes out. If Aaron Gordon's not playing, that is a nice boost to guys like Michael Porter Jr., Reggie Jackson, KCP to a degree as well. We'll have to play around, or I'll need to look a little bit closer at what other pivots I want to make if Gordon ends up being out. But again, that's just more news we have to wait for. All right. And then last team on the slate. Like I said, I like the Clippers here. I want to prioritize Paul George and James Harden. They're the 2 guys I'm going to make sure show up in my lines tonight. Kawhi Leonard, he has been impacted by James Harden being on the Clippers. He hasn't been producing as well. Also, Harden's a little bit cheaper than Kawhi, which makes me feel a little bit better about playing him. When they're the same price tag, it really messes with my head, but Harden being a little bit cheaper, I can get on board with. So, like I said, Harden and PG are the priorities. And then, if we're desperate for value, I'm okay with having a little bit of guys like Zubac, Powell, Terrence Mann. But again, they're not guys I'm going to try to prioritize on a slate like this. So, like I said, interesting slate. Hoping we get some news so I can play more of the guys I really want to. But you all know my approach is usually just trusting the DS and then forcing in my leverage plays from there. So, I look forward to seeing everyone on the pre-lock show. If you're not able to make it, look forward to celebrating with you all tomorrow, same time. Shorter slate though, I think. All right, so I'll see you all later. Peace out. Have a good one. Goodbye.